فإن آمنوا بمثل ما آمنتم به فقد اهتدوا وإن تولوا فإنما هم في شقاق.
بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Inshallah, today's lecture we're going to speak about the correct methodology in seeking knowledge. Without a doubt, seeking knowledge is from the best acts of ibadah, worship that a person can do. The reason being because you have acts of ibadah where they are, or the benefit is intransitive in the sense that it benefits you, and you have acts of ibadah that is transitive, i.e. the benefit benefits you and it also benefits another person as well. When a person seeks knowledge with the correct intention, then it's an act of ibadah which brings a lot of benefit to the person himself, in the sense that they are able to understand the religion and act upon it correctly, and also benefits to other people because they're able to teach other people and enjoying good and forbid evil. So knowledge of Islam, al-ilm, or seeking al-ilm of Islam, is from the most noble and virtuous actions of ibadah that a person can do. So the title of this talk is the correct methodology of learning Islamic knowledge for the beginner. The correct methodology of learning Islamic knowledge for the beginner, and outline what we're going to speak about briefly are the following points. We're going to cover the following points on this lecture. Please write them down. These are going to be the headings. So the first one is the benefits of ilm. The benefits of ilm. The second is the definition of ilm. The third, the objectives of ilm, of studying or of seeking al-ilm, knowledge. The fourth, the third, the objectives, or the goal, or the aim. The objectives of seeking knowledge. The fifth, the hukum of learning knowledge, of seeking knowledge. The sixth, the types of knowledge. That's the fifth. I'm counting. I've gone ahead. It's the fifth one. The first one, number one, benefits of knowledge. Number two, definition of knowledge. Number three, the objectives of seeking knowledge. Number four, the hukum, or the ruling of seeking knowledge. Number five, the types of knowledge. Number six, the first phase, the preliminary phase of seeking knowledge. This speaks about the methodology now. And then number seven, the subjects studied in the preliminary phase. The subjects that you study in this preliminary, i.e. the early phase. And number eight, 5 reasons for success, or 5 causes for success in seeking knowledge. So in total, those are this talk, the correct methodology of seeking knowledge for the beginner. We'll cover 8 points. 8 points. The first one is the benefits of knowledge. The benefits of knowledge. Knowledge or knowledge is mentioned. Well, there's many ayat, many ahadith in the Quran. There's many ayat in the Quran and ahadith which are sayings and actions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which mention the benefits of knowledge. So the first thing is that to know something is beneficial or not is through the Quran and the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So for the Muslim to know whether something is noble and virtuous and beneficial or not, he has to look at the Quran and he has to look at the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when we look at the Quran and we look at the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we find that there's many verses and many hadith that indicate the advantage and the benefit and the virtue of seeking knowledge. The first is ayah in Surah Al-Zumar, verse number 9. Allah says, قُلْ هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Say, are those that know equal to those that do not know? إِنَّمَا يَتَذَكَّرُ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. Verily, the people of intelligence benefit from the reminder. So this verse, it shows that the person who has knowledge is better than the person who doesn't. So you have somebody that knows and somebody that's ignorant. So the person that has the knowledge is better than the person that doesn't know. They're not equal, they're not the same. The verse, it mentions a question, قُلْ هَلْ. It's a question particle, saying hal. It's asking a question, say, is هَلْ يَسْتَوِي الَّذِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ وَالَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. Say, asking them, the Prophet Muhammad ask them, say, is the person that has knowledge better, or is the person that has knowledge and the person that doesn't have any knowledge, are they the same? So it's a rhetorical question, they're not the same. This highlights the answer to this is no, they're not the same. They're not the same. So what do you understand from the verse? The one that has knowledge is better than the person that doesn't have knowledge. As for that hadith, so that's one verse in the Quran, but there's many more. But we're going to keep it summarized. As for that hadith, then there's a famous hadith of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan where he said, I heard the message of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or the message of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Man yuridillahu bihi khayran yufaqihu fi din. And this hadith is in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. The hadith of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan says that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if Allah wants good for the person, He gives him fiqh in the deen. He gives him understanding of the religion. I.e., He makes him a person who has fiqh, has understanding of the deen. And the person who has understanding of the deen, he's a person who's an alim, he's a scholar. A person that has understanding of the deen, that person is an alim, a faqih, an alim of the religion. So this hadith shows what? It shows the virtue and the advantage and the benefit of knowledge. Because it shows that this is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is knowledge? Ilm. What is it? If your person is a student of knowledge, he's a seeker of knowledge, he's learning knowledge, he has to know what knowledge is that he's going to learn. All of these headings are an introduction to, before speaking about the correct methodology of seeking knowledge. Why? To encourage a person to traverse that path, and also to encourage the person that is traversing that path and taking that path to remain on it and not to fall off it. Because it requires patience, as you're going to see. So, if a person is seeking knowledge, he has to understand what is knowledge. The first thing is that knowledge linguistically is to know something as it is in reality. To know something as it is in reality, that's knowledge. The opposite of it is ignorance. Not to know something. As an example, if I ask you what's the postcode of BrixtonMasjid, who knows? Say again? What's the rest of it? Is that SW9? Okay, so you know some of you don't know all of it. He has knowledge of the first half and is ignorant of the second half. But he acknowledges his ignorance, so it's okay. It's better than guessing. So knowledge is to know something as it is in reality. I always throw this example out, and I'm going to do it. If you've heard it already before, then I apologise. Brixton, I went to Brixton in Croydon. Last time I was in Croydon, I visited Brixton. Last time I was in Croydon, I visited Brixton and had lunch. Last time I was in Croydon, I visited Brixton and had lunch. I bought a patty. I don't want you to repeat, I want you to understand it. Huh? It's batil. Is that ignorance or knowledge? Why?
Not sure.
No, I gave you a statement. I said last time I was in Croydon, it's not reality. Why is it not reality? When's the last time any of you went to Croydon? Yesterday. You didn't visit the shop called Brixton, Caribbean food shop. You've never been there. There's a shop in Croydon called Brixton, and they sell food. So what I said was knowledge of humanities, knowledge of, that's qualified. We say knowledge. He's a seeker of knowledge. It means he's studying Islam. That's what it means. Otherwise, you have to qualify it. Knowledge of accountancy, knowledge of law, knowledge of medicine. And they're all beneficial. But knowledge, unqualified, is knowledge of Islam. When a person studies knowledge of Islam, then knowledge of Islam is divided into two categories, or generally speaking, in an overview. It's knowledge of al-akhbar al-ghaybiyya and knowledge of ahkam. What does that mean? The first, if you look at the Quran and the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you find that, and that's language generally speaking, you find that it's either information that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us and informs us about, either of the past nations, or of what's going to happen in the afterlife, or what's going to happen in the future, or what happened in the past. Information. Or knowledge that Allah gives us about Himself, Jalla Jalala. That's knowledge of the unseen. That's one type. That's the first one. Knowledge of akhbar, information. Information. The second type is ahkam, which are rulings, commands and prohibitions. I.e. commands which are connected to worship, prohibitions which are connected to worship, commands which are connected to mu'amalat and dealings of people, prohibitions which are connected to your mu'amalat and dealings of people. Based upon this, then, if we said knowledge of the deen is knowledge of the akhbar and the ahkam. That's what it is. It's knowledge of aqeedah and tawheed and fiqh and everything connected to that. It's knowledge of the akhbar, which is the information, what's going to the Dajjal, the character description of the Dajjal, what's going to happen in the afterlife, what happened in the past, the previous nations. That's information, news that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs us about in the Quran and in the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is knowledge, that you know these things, and of the ahkam, i.e. the commands and the prohibitions connected to worship, connected to mu'amalat. So that's the definition of knowledge. The next subheading was what? We did definition just now. The objective of studying knowledge. The objective, or the aim and the purpose and the goal in studying knowledge. So the first one was the benefits of knowledge. Second, the definition of knowledge. The third, the benefits of studying. Why does a person seek knowledge? Why only two people know? We're sitting here, we're seeking knowledge. We've come here to seek knowledge. We're here to seek knowledge and to learn together, learn about Islam together. That's what we're here to do. Why? What's the reason? What do you want to gain from sitting down here seeking knowledge? Huh? Understanding of the deen. Okay?
To remove ignorance from yourself.
To remove ignorance from yourself.
Save yourself and your family from the nar.
Save yourself and your family from the fire. Huh? To get some experience. What do you mean? Huh? To know.
To get closer to Allah.
Get closer to Allah. He hasn't spoken.
I mean, but I was going to say exactly what he said.
Well, say it then. What is it?
Remove ignorance from yourself.
Why are you here seeking knowledge? Why does a person seek knowledge? Huh? Why does a person seek knowledge of Islam?
To increase in the fear of Allah.
Seeking knowledge of Islam, the objective and the purpose behind it is two. Number one, to act upon it. To actions. I.e., all of the answers you said, it's included in this, but you didn't say it. For example, save yourself from your family from the hellfire. How? By worshiping Allah. How do you worship Allah without knowledge? It's not possible. So it's to act. So you learn something not for the sake of theory, but for the sake of practicing it. It's not a theory that you're learning. Oh, I've got the theory down, that's okay. No, you have to practice it. So the purpose or the aim, the first one, is to act upon the knowledge, to implement it. So it's actions. The second one is what? To teach and to give dawah. To teach other people. And it comes under saving yourselves and your family from hellfire. Why? Save yourself by acting upon it. Save your family by teaching them to the knowledge that you learn to act upon it. The mahr of the person who didn't have any mahr, what was it? The Sahaba, who didn't have anything to give in mahr. What was the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah specifically. Why Baqarah specifically? That's what he knew. But Baqarah has ahkam, loads of it. Surah Al-Baqarah has ahkam, loads of rulings to do different things. It's the biggest surah in the Quran. So when a person learns Surah Al-Baqarah, what are they going to learn? How to practice Islam as well. So the aim and the purpose behind seeking knowledge is, number one, actions, because it's not just a theory. It has a practical application in your life. And the second is to teach and to call others to it, to invite people to this knowledge, the belief in Allah, to follow the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. how do you act upon the akhbar and the ahkam? You said knowledge is combined of two things, al-akhbar and ahkam. Information and rulings, orders and prohibitions. Okay, how do you act upon information? Believing in it. You're acting upon the information that you come across, that you learn, is by believing in it and affirming the truth of it. How do you act upon the ahkam? By doing it. By actually doing it. So you act upon the ahkam by doing it, act upon the akhbar by believing in it. How about teaching it? How do you teach Islam to others? By teaching them the akhbar and teaching them the ahkam. Teaching them the rules and teaching them the information, which is knowledge, aqidah, belief in the unseen. How do you call people to it? How? What's dawah to knowledge? We've mentioned teaching. There's a difference between teaching and giving dawah.
Action, explain. Explanation.
What's the difference between teaching and explaining?
The dawah through action.
Dawah through action is one way. When it comes to the ahkam, the rulings, by implementing them and acting upon them, you're giving dawah to them. In your workplace, in your place of study, in your home, in your community, your neighborhood, you're a practicing Muslim. So people, by looking at you, they learn from you. Because they see you doing stuff. They see you praying. They see you giving sadaqah. They see you helping the old and the weak and the vulnerable and stuff like that. So that's dawah. By acting upon the ahkam, you're giving dawah. How do you give dawah to the akhbar? To the news? How do you give dawah to the information, the stuff of the unseen? By giving tarheeb and targheeb. Targheeb is to do what? To encourage a person, to motivate people. To encourage them and to motivate them by explaining to them the rewards and the benefits and the virtues. What does this lesson began with what? The benefits of seeking knowledge. Why? Why do the scholars start with the benefits of an action, the virtues of salah? The rewards for the person that prays the Fajr in Jama'ah, the rewards for the person that prays the Asr on time, doesn't delay, is not neglectful. Why? To encourage and to motivate the person to be consistent upon that action. So, by giving dawah to knowledge, or giving dawah to Islam, is motivating them and encouraging them by mentioning the rewards and the virtues for doing those actions. And the opposite. To mention to them the punishments for not doing these actions and for doing the sins. So by tarheeb and targheeb. Targheeb is to encourage and to motivate and to persuade, and tarheeb is to warn against and to instill fear for the person that does these actions. So again, the purpose and the objective in seeking knowledge is to act upon it, because it's not just a theory, and also to teach others and to call others to it. And then teaching and calling others, it has a methodology as well, but teaching through actions and calling others to it through tarheeb and targheeb. The next, what was the fourth heading? The ruling. What's the ruling of seeking knowledge? What's the ruling of seeking knowledge? The hukum, i.e., what does it mean when we say the hukum anyway? What does it mean? Huh? Are you all commanded in the Quran and Sunnah to seek knowledge? And that command is a command where you don't have an option in not doing it, or is it a command where you have an option? Meaning that, is seeking knowledge something which is fard, wajib, or is it something which is mustahab? So what's the hukum, or what's the ruling of seeking knowledge? That's the fourth heading. The ruling of seeking knowledge is that it's sometimes fard al-ayn and sometimes fard al-kifaya. It may be fard al-ayn, it may be fard al-kifaya, it depends. Fard al-ayn is an individual obligation upon everybody. And fard al-kifaya means that it's a collective obligation on the community. Meaning, Islam is concerned with the action itself being established, not with every single individual doing the action. So as long as the action is established, then that's fine. Whereas Fard al-Ayn, Islam is concerned with every single individual doing that action. Not the action itself being established, but the individual, all of them doing the action. An example of Fard al-Ayn is Salat al-Mafrood al-Khamsa, the 5 obligatory Salat, or an example of Fard al-Kifaya is the Janazah Salah. So you don't have to pray as long as it's being prayed. Okay, how do you know which knowledge is Fard al-Ayn and which knowledge is Fard al-Kifaya or Fard al-Kifaya? It's simple. It's what you need to know to be able to practice and to be a Muslim. What you need to know to be able to be a Muslim practicing Islam. Meaning ibadat. You have to know prayer. And because you have to pray, means you have to know the things which nullify your prayer. You have to know the conditions for your prayer. You have to know how to make wudu properly. You have to know if you haven't got wudu or you haven't got water, what you can use. You have to know that. Why? Because you have to pray, and you have to pray with tahara, upon purity. So that's individual obligation upon every single Muslim. Zakat. If you're poor, you don't pay zakat, you receive zakat. But if you're wealthy and you're rich, then you pay zakat. So if you've got money, you have to know how much zakat has to be paid, when it has to be paid. What's the wealth that it has to be paid on, and what's the wealth that it doesn't have to be paid on. You have to know that. You want to get married. You have to know the responsibilities of the husband if you're a man, and the responsibilities of the wife if you're a woman. You have to know, for example, that the man, he's the maintainer of the house, he's the one that works and earns and spends. You have to know that it's an obligation, nafaqah on the man is an obligation, it's wajib. So you have to know. So that's Fard al-Ayn. As for Fard al-Kifaya, is the knowledge which covers most of the deen, knowledge that covers most of the religion. Not so that you're not necessarily to act upon it, but to teach other people it. Not necessarily to act upon it only, but also so that you can be a person who's an alim, teaching people the deen and calling them to act upon it. So this knowledge, the first Fard al-Ayn is so that you can act upon it in your daily life. That's Fard al-Ayn. Fard al-Kifaya is knowledge which covers the deen, most of it, because this just covers what you need to know to act upon. This covers the entire deen. Not just so you can act upon it, but so you can teach other people it and call them to act upon it as well. So that knowledge is Fard al-Kifaya. It's not an obligation upon everybody. So when you speak about seeking knowledge as a student of knowledge, then you have to ask yourself, the knowledge you're seeking, what does it come under? Which category does it come under? So you know if by leaving it you're sinful, or by leaving it you're not considered sinful. What was the next heading? Types of knowledge. So now you know the ruling of seeking knowledge and you want to seek knowledge. You say to yourself, okay, I want to be a person that's seeking knowledge. Then you have to know what are the types of knowledge so that you can actually seek knowledge have the correct methodology. What's the knowledge which is Fard al-Kifaya that a student seeks? The knowledge is divided into 4 types. First, knowledge of the book and the Sunnah. Knowledge of the book and the Sunnah, the Quran and the Sunnah. Number 2, learning and knowledge of the understanding of the Salaf of the book and the Sunnah. That's second. Third, knowledge of the sciences which were derived from the book and the Sunnah. Knowledge of the sciences, the Islamic sciences that are derived from the book and the Sunnah. And the fourth is knowledge of the sciences which help you understand the book and the Sunnah. They assist you in understanding the book and the Sunnah. Okay, the first type, knowledge of the book and the Sunnah. The book and the Sunnah is the source of the religion. So a person can't be studying the Deen unless he has knowledge of the Quran and the Sunnah, the book and the Sunnah. What does that mean? It means knowing tafsir of Quran and explanation of hadith. It means knowing tafsir of Quran and explanation of shuru of hadith. So, for example, the books of tafsir of Quran, like the tafsir of Shaykh Abdul Rahman al-Sa'idi, tafsir of Ibn Kathir, tafsir of Shawkani, like that. Knowledge of explanation of hadith. You have Fath al-Bari, which is an explanation of Sahih al-Bukhari. You have Imam Nawawi's explanation of Sahih Muslim, explanations of hadith. So there's a hadith, okay, what's the explanation of that hadith? By the scholars. What's the tafsir of that verse? So that's the first one, knowledge of the book and the Sunnah. The book and the Sunnah is the source of the religion. You can't be seeking the knowledge of the religion unless you have knowledge of the explanation of the book and the Sunnah. The second was knowledge of the understanding of the Salaf. Why is that important? Because Allah testified to their uprightness and because they have the best understanding of the book and the Sunnah. So a person's understanding of the book and the Sunnah will not be correct if it opposes the understanding of the Salaf. Is that understood? I.e., someone comes up with an explanation of a verse and it goes against the explanation of the Salaf. Then it's not possible that their understanding is better than the understanding of the Salaf. What's meant by the Salaf, the word the Salaf, is the Sahaba and the scholars from the Tabi'een and the scholars from the Atba' Tabi'een and the Uluma from the Madhab that followed them upon that understanding. So that's what's meant by the Salaf, the first few generations, generally speaking. What does it mean to have knowledge of the understanding of the Salaf? It means to have knowledge of their sayings in relation to these ayat, in relation to the ahadith. Knowledge of how they understood these verses, knowledge of how they understood the ahadith. The issues are in the Quran and the Sunnah, how do they understand it? That's what it means. The third and the fourth aqsam or types or categories of knowledge is knowledge of the Islamic sciences which are derived from the book and the Sunnah, and knowledge of the sciences which assist and help in understanding the book and the Sunnah. What does it mean by this? You have books which are authored in Islamic sciences or different subjects, but those subjects, the basis of them or the source of them is in the Quran and the Sunnah. So the Quran, it speaks about Tawheed, and it speaks about Aqidah, it speaks about fiqh. Why? Because it's akhbar and ahkam. But scholars, they took just that subject of Tawheed and authored books on it. So that's the third type, which is knowledge of the sciences which are derived from the Quran and the Sunnah. Meaning that they're in the Quran and Sunnah, but the author just dealt with just that subject from the Quran and from the Sunnah. Which is why if you study Kitab al-Tawheed by Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahid, you'll find, what does he mention? Ayat and Ahadith only, that's it. Which shows you that he took it from where? The Quran and the Sunnah. Doesn't mention his own words. Other books he might mention some own words of the author and then mention Ayat and Ahadith to support it. Point is, that book, Kitab al-Tawheed, is a book on the subject of Tawheed which has been taken from the Quran and from the Sunnah. So, the most important of these subjects for the seeker of knowledge is Tawheed, Aqidah, and what's the third one? Fiqh. From these sciences which are taken from the Quran and the Sunnah, books authored just on these subjects, the most important for the student of knowledge and for the Muslim is Tawheed, I'tiqad, and Fiqh. Why? Tawheed pertains to your belief, and Tawheed and I'tiqad pertains to your belief, and Fiqh pertains to your actions. As for the fourth category, which is knowledge of the sciences which assist and aid or help a person, then what that means is sciences or subjects that help a person if it comes to, for example, writing or reading or in understanding the book and the Sunnah. The most important are Mustalah Hadith, Nahu being grammar, Usul al-Fiqh, the principles of Fiqh, and Mustalah Hadith, the principles of or the terminology of Hadith. Nahu, how does it help you? How does it help you understand the book and the Sunnah? Huh?
The grammar, that's the...
Nahu is grammar. So how does it help you understand the book and the Sunnah?
Understand the text.
Go on. You're right, to understand the text. How though? كلم الله موسى. Allah spoke to Musa. Allah spoke to Musa in the Quran. Allah says, كلم الله موسى. Allah spoke to Musa. كلم الله موسى. It's got a dhamma to show that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the fa'il of the fi'il. Allah is the doer of the speak. Allah is the speaker. Allah is the one that spoke. If you change that dhamma to a fatha and makes Allah the object, then it makes Musa the one that spoke. So if you said كلم الله موسى, that's not what happened. If you said Musa spoke to Allah, that's nahu. That's changing that's nahu, that's grammar. What has it done? You've changed the meaning of the Quran. Completely different meaning just by changing one haraka. One vowel, you change the meaning completely. Which is why there's a statement of one of the Khulafa al-Rashidin, I think it was Umar ibn Khattab, he said, he feared that a people will come, they do not understand or know the Arabic language properly. So they fall in the hadith, they fall underneath the hadith, they fall into the hadith, where the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever lies on me intentionally, then let him take his seat in the hellfire. Whoever lies on me intentionally, let him take his seat in the hellfire. There's a hadith which is mutawatir where the Messenger of Allah said, من كذب عليه فليتبوأ مقعده من النار. Whoever lies on me, then let him take his seat in the hellfire. Okay, how can a person lie on the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam if he doesn't understand grammar? Nahu. Because he relates a hadith on the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he doesn't say it how the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said it. He doesn't understand nahu, or his nahu is bad, so he changes the meaning of the hadith because he changes the endings of the vowels. Unintentionally, that is. So even unintentionally, he goes and says the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and he mentions the hadith. But the Messenger of Allah didn't say what he said. He changed the vowels on the hadith. And the Messenger of Allah didn't speak in an Arabic which is not Fusha, which is not correct grammatically. The Messenger of Allah didn't speak in broken Arabic, in ungrammatical Arabic, for example. Do you see the point of why Nahu is important in understanding the Quran and the Sunnah? Because if you don't understand Nahu, you don't understand who's the speaker, who's the spoken to, who's the doer of the action, who's the done to. That's all by changing the vowels at the end of the letters. That's it. Is that clear? So Nahu is from the sciences which are essential and important for the student of knowledge, so you can understand the Quran and the Hadith. Also, Usul al-Fiqh and Mustalah Hadith. Why? Because Usul al-Fiqh is the methodology of fiqh, so you can understand fiqh properly, and Mustalah Hadith is the methodology of making a hadith authentic or rejected, weak, strong, and stuff like that. So those are the 5 sciences which a student of knowledge will study: Tawheed, I'tiqad, Fiqh, Nahu, and Mustalah Hadith. And these 5 sciences that broadly cover not learning the deen, i.e. knowledge of the book and the Sunnah, fahm of the Salaf. There's these 2, and the importance of this categorization is that a person doesn't do what? He doesn't start above his level. He doesn't go to, for example, trying to understand directly the book and the Sunnah on the fahm of the Salaf without having the foundations which help him to understand that. He studies the foundations first, and those foundations give him the understanding that when he picks up the Quran and the Sunnah, he's able to understand it in its correct understanding. What was the next heading? So far, let's recap. First heading was benefits of knowledge. Second heading, definition of knowledge. Third heading, objectives and the aims, the purpose of seeking knowledge. It's not for theory, just so you can know. Fourth, the ruling of seeking knowledge. Fifth, the types of knowledge. The aqsam, the categorization of knowledge. What's the next one?
First phase of
The preliminary phase is seeking knowledge for the beginner. And this is the topic of the title, the methodology, the correct methodology in seeking knowledge for the beginner. And we're all beginners. We're all beginners. So we have to know what is the correct methodology. After knowing the types of knowledge or the categorization of knowledge, and you say to yourself, I want to seek knowledge, then you have to know what is the first phase or the first stage of seeking knowledge. Because you don't want to miss the first stage and go to the 5th level. Do you start studying at degree level, or do you go primary school, secondary school, and then college and then degree? Where do you start? Start primary school. And then you go to secondary school, and then you go to college, and then you go. What would happen if you skip primary school and went straight to degree level? You're going to be successful, or you're going to be a failure? What if you skip primary school and went to college? Are you going to be successful, or are you going to be a failure? Failure. Knowledge of Islam, sequence of Islam, you have to go through the right levels. You have to take one level at a time. You have to start with the first preliminary stage before you go to the higher stages when it comes to seeking knowledge. So what is the first stage? The first stage is to memorize and to learn and to read and study, summarize texts in each of the sciences. To memorize, to learn and to study summarized textbooks or concise textbooks in each of the 5 sciences that we mentioned. I.e., you study a textbook in fiqh. In what are the other subjects? Tawheed, I'tiqad and Aqidah, Usul al-Fiqh, Nahu, grammar, and Mustalah Hadith. So that's the preliminary phase or stage. Who's done that? Who's covered a book in each of these 5 sciences? Put your hands up. Who's done a book in 4 of them? 3 of them? Completed, finished?
Or maybe
3 of them. What are they? What books did you study in each side?
done Medina book 1.
Okay.
We've done Kitab al-Tawheed.
So Tawheed. Medina book 1 is not a book on Nahu specifically. I.e., Medina book 1 by itself doesn't cover the science of Nahu in a comprehensive, it covers some of it, and even then it's implicit, not explicit. Unless you're reading the questions along the way, then it becomes explicit. Find the mubtada, find the khabar, like that. But just outside of that, if it's just a teacher doing the teaching for you, and you might read the questions, it doesn't cover it explicitly. Until you go to Medina book 3, at the beginning it covers it. It says mubtada, khabar, and it starts to speak about the nahu of it. So Medina book 1 teaches language, doesn't teach grammar specifically. Okay, alhamdulillah, in any case, if you haven't, then that should be your goal. That should be the aim of every person that is serious about seeking knowledge, and he's not just talking about it or speaking about Islam without knowledge. He has to make sure he covers a book in each of these 5 sciences. And inshallah, hopefully we're going to have courses on each one of them anyway, one-day courses on each of these sciences over the next 6 months or so. In any case, this is the first level. The second level is what? We said knowledge is categorized into 4 types. Ulum al-mustakhrija min kitab al-sunnah, wa ulum al-masa'ida. These are the 2 that are covered in these 5. Masa'ida being nahu, mustalah, hadith, usul al-fiqh. Mustakhrija being i'tiqad, tawheed, and fiqh. Which is 6, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's 6. Yeah, 3 of them are mustakhrija min al-kitab al-sunnah, 3 of them are masa'ida. 3 which are masa'ida, nahu, usul al-fiqh, and fiqh, the sciences. And the 3 which are mustakhrija, subjects taken from the Sunnah, tawheed, i'tiqad, and fiqh. Does not say usul al-fiqh isn't taken from the book and the Sunnah either, or mustalah hadith isn't taken from it. But it's also taken from the language as well, in the case of usul al-fiqh.
So I've got 5.
The 6th one is fiqh, usul al-fiqh, mustalah hadith.
So fiqh usul fiqh separate.
Not separate, yeah. The second stage is to memorize and to read and to study a summarized book in tafsir of Quran and explanation of hadith of Sunnah with the understanding of the Salaf. What does that mean? That means to study stuff like tafsir ibn Kathir and to study, for example, Fath al-Bari for Sharh of Sahih Bukhari, or study, for example, the book which is Al-Lu'lu' wal-Marjan, the book of hadith which are agreed upon by Bukhari and Muslim with an explanation. So it would be to study and to read and to memorize and to learn a book like that. That's the next level. Why? This gives you the details. This gives you the branches and the furu', not just the foundation. This now builds on the foundation that you've already got on the first stage and phase. This now builds on, is looking at the different sayings of the Salaf, knowing what they agreed upon and what they differed about as well. So knowing these things comes after having the foundations. Because it's dealing with now the branches of the sciences. Whereas here's the science, here's the foundation, well here's the branches of it. You don't study the branches unless you have the base and the foundation. And the reason for their differing, the reasons why there was difference. You don't start with that. What was the next top on the? What was the next heading? The subject. Okay. So far we spoke about the benefits and the advantages of seeking knowledge. Then we spoke about what is meant by knowledge. Then we spoke about the objective and the purpose of seeking knowledge, why a person does it. Then we spoke about the ruling of seeking knowledge, the hukm of seeking knowledge. Then the types of knowledge, the preliminary phase of seeking knowledge, what you have to study, and then now we speak about the subjects that you study, i.e. what is tawheed, what is aqidah, what is fiqh, what is mustalah hadith, what is usul fiqh, and what is nahu. What are these subjects? What's the definition of these subjects? So you understand what it is that a person is going to be studying when he studies these subjects. And then we'll mention a famous, well-known mukhtasar book in each of these sciences, which will give you the methodology, the correct methodology in seeking knowledge. So the first is tawheed, and it's from the most important subject that a Muslim studies. What does it mean linguistically? It means to make something one. To make something one. Islamically, it means إفراد الله عز وجل بما يختص به. To single Allah out in that which is specific to Allah. To single Allah out in that which is specific to Allah, that which is rightfully His. Other people say إفراد الله بالعبادة, because that's what pertains to the actions of the Muslim. And it's divided into three categories: Tawheed of Rububiyyah, Tawheed of Uluhiyyah, and Tawheed of Asma wa Sifat. It's divided into three categories, and they're well known for everyone that attends a masjid like Masjid Ibn Taymiyyah, where it's something which is explained over and over again due to its importance. The next subject, everyone knows Tawheed al-Rububiyyah or Ibadah and Tawheed al-Asma wa-Sifat. If you all say yes, that means I can ask you all questions for definitions and you have to give it to me then. Isn't that right? There's no point saying yes if when I ask you can't answer. Yeah? Alright, so we'll ask. What is the definition of Tawheed of Ibadah? Or what do you learn when you study Tawheed of Ibadah? Rather than definition, what is it you're learning? What are you studying?
Correctly to worship Allah as He
Good. How to worship Allah. What's expected of us in terms of worship? Good. Okay. What are you studying when you study Tawheed of Rububiyyah?
Just thinking about it being the Lordship of Allah.
Yeah. So what does it mean, Lordship of Allah?
Not to associate part
In?
Him being the Lord of Allah.
Good. The Creator, the Sustainer, the Provider, the Giver of life, the Taker of life. All these things are for Allah alone. Tawheed of Asma wa Sifat, what are you studying? Names and attributes, meaning that Allah alone is described with His names and attributes in their absolute perfect sense. Asma al-Husna wa Sifat al-Uliya. That they're beautiful names and lofty attributes. Just so you know, when it comes to i'tiqad, or the second subject, which is aqidah, belief, then aqidah, the subject that you cover in aqidah, or i'tiqad itself means jazm. It means to have, to be certain about something, to have certainty about something. As for aqidah, the definition Islamically, then it could be said that it is to know the statements of the Salaf in the issues where people innovated in. To know the statements of the Salaf in the issues where people innovated in from the statements of the Mubtada'ah who attribute themselves to Islam. So it's to know the statements of the Salaf in new issues where people innovated in from the statements of the Mubtada'ah who attribute themselves to Islam. And a lot of these issues pertain to Asma wa Sifat, or some of them. A large portion pertain to names and attributes of Allah. And some of these issues pertain to ahkam. Some of these issues pertain to rulings. Most of them pertain to akhbar, i.e. information, like denial of qadar, or denial of some of the names and attributes of Allah, And some of them pertain to ahkam, to rulings. Like for example, issues, this is aqidah, yeah, we're talking about aqidah. Like for example, issues of enjoining good and forbidding evil against the rulers who are considered oppressive, stuff like this. These are issues to do with ahkam. The issues of wiping over the socks, issues to do with ahkam, people innovated in it. Yeah? So that's aqidah. Why is it called aqidah? Some scholars say that it's called aqidah because the statements of the Salaf in these issues are majzoom bihim. They firm, they confirm, they're certain about them. There's no room for dispute or disagreement. They all have the same statement on these issues. They're certain, there's only one statement on it. The next science is ilm al-fiqh. What is fiqh? Linguistically, it's understanding. Islamically, it's knowledge of the rulings which are related to our outward actions of worship and dealings with others. Knowledge of the rulings related to our outward actions of worship and dealings with others. Knowledge of the rulings related to our outward actions of worship and dealings with others. That's fiqh. Meaning that it's not connected to Tawheed. When I say not connected to Tawheed, it's not knowledge of akhbar, it's knowledge of ahkam. Commands, prohibitions. When it comes to fiqh, then it's issues. There are issues in fiqh where the scholars have ijma' on, they have consensus on. There's no difference of opinion on them. Like the obligation of praying 5 times a day. There's no one that says you only have to pray twice a day. And no one that says that person's gone against ijma'. Gone against ijma' is considered ridda. There's issues which there's consensus on, and there's issues which there's difference of opinion about. So the issues from the Salaf, there's issues which I have agreement upon, there's issues which I have difference of opinion about. Fiqh became known or became widespread to be known attached to 4 imams. Fiqh became known on 4 imams, the 4 schools of thoughts that became famous. The school of Imam Abu Hanifa, the school of Imam Malik, the school of Imam Shafi, and the school of Imam Ahmed. That's fiqh. The next one is nahu. What is nahu? It's knowing the principles of the Arabic language, knowing the rules for the Arabic language. When does the word change from having a dhamma at the end to having a fatha at the end? Why does it change? What are the principles? It's learning those principles. That's what nahu is. Learning the principles or the rules of the Arabic language. Why is it necessary? The Quran is revealed in Arabic. So, to understand it properly, you have to understand nahu. Why is it necessary? Because the Prophet Muhammad, who is a prophet to all mankind, was Arab. And he spoke Arabic. So, to understand the hadith, you have to understand Arabic language. What time is it? Salat? 7? 7:30. The next science is usul al-fiqh, or the next subject. In the first preliminary stage of seeking knowledge is usul al-fiqh. What does usul al-fiqh cover? It covers the methodology of understanding fiqh. The methodology of fiqh, basically. What does that mean? It means understanding the principles which are used by the scholars of fiqh to deduce rulings from the sources. It's understanding the principles of the scholars of fiqh to deduce rulings from the sources, the Quran and the Sunnah, and also the application of those principles to the sources. It's 3 pillars. Usul al-fiqh is understanding the principles used to derive rulings from the sources. That's one. Second principle is the application of those principles to the sources. How you apply them. An example, just quickly. to make it clear. If there's a command in the Quran, it means that if there's a command verb, an imperative verb, do this, don't do that, or command, do this, then that means that action is an obligation. That's what it means. So any command you come across, you can say it's an obligation. That's a general principle. Okay, apply it. Sometimes, if that command is preceded the command that is to do the opposite of that command, then you wouldn't apply that command. Just an example, visiting graves. Permissible or impermissible? Recommended. Initially it was considered it was haram. Okay, the nahi or the prohibition to visit graves, usually if there's a prohibition, it means that you have to refrain from doing that thing. So do you say, okay, there's a prohibition, that means you have to refrain from visiting graves? No. Apply it in accordance with, you have to apply it knowing that there's another command that came afterwards that abrogates that one. So that's the knowledge of the abrogating and the abrogated verses and ahadith. So you have knowledge of the principle, you have knowledge of the application of the principle to the evidences. When can you apply it? When can't you apply it? When can you apply it? When can't you apply it? Or if there's two evidences where they apparently have a conflict, which one do you act upon? Like that. So that's the application of the principles. So you have the principles, you have the application. That's usul al-fiqh. The methodology of deducing rulings from the sources. And to do that, you have to have knowledge of the principles, and you have to have knowledge of the application of those principles to the sources. And then you have to know what the sources are. Because you have to know what you're going to be deriving evidence from. You can't derive evidence from your head. Evidence is derived from your intellect, what you think is right, what you think is wrong. Why? Because what you think is right, you think wrong, differs from what he thinks is right, and differs from what he... Why? Because it's based upon a lot of things are based upon your culture and your upbringing, how you was raised. So you're raised to believe it's okay to whatever, to steal, for example. But someone else is raised to know that it's wrong to steal. I mean, most people know it's wrong to steal, but I couldn't think of a better example apart from the extreme one. I was going to say lie. You're raised to think that's okay to lie. Everyone says Father Christmas. You go out and realize Father Christmas doesn't exist. Okay, you're raised to believe there's something called a white lie that's permissible, for example. So it's in your culture to tell white lies. You don't see it as being harmful. It's harmful. It's a harmful lie. Islam says you can't lie full stop. There's no such thing as a white lie in that context, to make up something to make people happy and stuff like that. In general. Anyway, that's ilm usul fiqh. Then there's mustalah hadith. Mustalah hadith is knowing the principles which the scholars of hadith agree upon in authenticating or making inauthentic statements of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, i.e. hadith. This hadith is maqbool. Why? This hadith is rejected. Why? This hadith is accepted. Why? You have books of hadith, and scholars say this hadith is weak, you can't act upon it. But this hadith is accepted. What are the principles that they use to derive or to arrive at this conclusion? That this hadith you can accept, this hadith you can reject, is mustalah hadith. That's the science that you study to understand that. Why is it important? Because as a Muslim you practice Islam based upon following the guidance of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is the meaning of the Shahada, the second half of it. Okay, if the Prophet didn't do that thing, then there's no worship in doing it. Can't say I'm worshipping Allah following the Prophet. I said, but the hadith is weak. The scholars agree that it's weak, which means now that you're not worshipping Allah by doing that action. Why? Because the Messenger of Allah didn't do it. So you can't say that you're worshipping Allah. So it's important to know hadith which are weak and hadith which are authentic. Those are the sciences. Okay, what's a textbook in each of these sciences, which is famous, became well known? Tawheed Usul al-Thalatha. Tawheed Usul al-Thalatha. If you haven't studied it, that should be the first book that you complete, that you study completely. In Aqidah, there's many books. It's not just these ones. But these are the ones that, generally speaking, became renowned, widespread, studied across the Muslim world in many different countries. Aqidah al-Wasatiyya in Aqidah. The Aqidah al-Wasatiyya by Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, that's a book on Aqidah that a person studies. Then in Nahu, which is grammar, we have Al-Ajrumiyya. Al-Ajrumiyya, that's what's studied in Nahu. It's a small book. You can finish it in one day. And then after that, you need 1 year to understand it. You can read it in one day, but the understanding of it, the application of it, takes a lot longer. Then you have fiqh. In fiqh, I'm going to make a statement that you may not have heard before, or that you may find strange. It depends on what madhab you follow. It depends what book you go to study on fiqh. If you have to be from a country, for example, where you live, if you have to live in Somalia, for example, then you're going to study fiqh according to the Shafi'i madhab. If you live in Egypt, it depends on whereabouts in Egypt you live, you might study fiqh according to the Maliki madhab, according to the Shafi'i madhab. If you live in, for example, Pakistan, you're going to study fiqh according to what madhab? Hanafi madhab. There's no point living in Pakistan, being a Pakistani and trying to study fiqh according to the Hanbali madhab, generally speaking. As a study, to finish a method, to finish a textbook. I studied in Saudi. The madhab in the Mamlaka, generally speaking, is a Hanbali madhab. What does that mean? That means when it comes to learning fiqh, they use as their textbook books which are on the Hanbali madhab, to teach fiqh as a science, to teach the principles of the masail and the rulings. They use the books on the Hanbali madhab. So you find Shaykh Uthaymin rahmatullahi has explanations of a book called Zad al-Mustaqna'. That's a book on the Hanbali madhab that they study there as a main textbook. But if you're, for example, studying in a country where the madhab's Hanafi, then the main textbook they're going to study is going to be Mukhtasar al-Quduri maybe. That might be the first book they study. If you study a book in a country where they have study Maliki fiqh, could be Risala ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani. And if you're studying in a country like Yemen, or where they study Shafi'i fiqh, that's the main book that they study generally speaking, then you may study, what's the name of the main method in Shafi'i fiqh? Who remembers? Huh? It's the name of a person. Inshallah, I'll come back anyway. It's named after the person. Ibn Ashur is in the Maliki madhab. There's Ibn Abi Shuja'. No, it's not. The Risala is Maliki, and Risala of Imam Shafi'i is a book on Usul al-Fiqh. In any case, the point I'm getting at is that if you live in a country where they have a specific madhab, you're going to study the fiqh according to that madhab. This is the point I'm getting at. Okay, we live here. What's the madhab of England? What madhab does Britannia follow? There's no madhab. There's no madhab. If that's the case, then you study fiqh al-Sunnah straight. If you want to, you can study fiqh al-Sunnah. So you might take a book like Sayyid Sabiq's fiqh al-Sunnah and read through that, study the Masail. Or if you wanted, you find a person who studied a book on a specific madhab and you ask him to teach you that book, but based upon evidences which do not, which are clearly in accordance, are clearly not issues which are weak in relation to the Sunnah. I have some opinions. They contradict the clear hadith, for example. So you don't say, okay, well, it's my madhab, I'm going to follow it. No, it's not allowed. It's not allowed if there's a hadith which is clear that goes against the madhab to say, I'm going to stick to my madhab. It's not allowed, full stop. And you have some issues, it may not have reached the imam or the imam of that madhab. Some evidences may not have reached him, or some evidences he may not have been convinced with that evidence, and it appeared to him to contradict that evidence, so he didn't act upon it. But for you, if you know the hadith is authentic, then you have to act upon it. Is that understood with regards to studying fiqh? So, for example, if you're studying fiqh, are you going to study it with here? I think Abu Sahib teaches Wajiz. which is fiqh sunnah, or he teaches fiqh sunnah, which is Sayyid Sabiq, or he teaches along these lines. But if you wanted to study on a madhab, make sure the person who's teaching that book, he studied that book himself. He studied that book himself. He's not teaching something that studies. So if you want to study a book on for example, on Hanbali madhab, you may start with Shurut al-Salat by Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahid, which is a small book about the conditions of Salat. And then after you could go to Adab Masjid al-Salat, the etiquettes of walking to the Salat covers wudu, tahara, Salat and zakat. And then you may after that go to Zad or go to Umdat al-Fiqh, which is the main method in Hanbali madhab. Okay, to summarize, a book in each of these sciences, in Nahwu is Al-Ajrumiyah, in Tawheed is Usul al-Thalatha, or Thalathatul Usul wa Adillatuha, that's the correct name for it. In Aqidah is Aqidah al-Wasitiyah. In Mustalah Hadith we haven't covered. In Usul al-Fiqh we haven't covered. In the Fiqh we spoke about the Madhahib. Usul al-Fiqh, the muqtasar, the concise text that people study generally, is called Al-Waraqat by Imam al-Haramain al-Juwayni. So that's Al-Waraqat, it's called in Usul al-Fiqh. And in Mustalah Hadith is Nukhbat al-Fikr by Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, who explained Sahih al-Bukhari called Fath al-Bari. In Mustalah Hadith is called Nukhbat al-Fikr. Nukhbat al-Fikr. Some of these books are translated. Usul al-Thalath is translated. Wasiti is translated. Al-Ajrumi is translated as well. Al-Waraqat, you find some translations of it, but it's not complete, or there's some problems with it. Nukhbat al-Fikr, you'll find a translation for it as well. So a lot of these books are translated, but some of them are not published. You find PDFs, but they're not published. But the point is, these are the books.
You authored Al-Waraqat?
Al-Waraqat is Imam al-Haramain al-Juwayni. He's famous for Usul al-Fiqh. So a person that has studied all of these books, then he can not say he's a student of knowledge, but he can say he's on the path to seeking knowledge. Because that's what it means to be a student, not just to read half a page here and to come across some information on the internet over there and to sit in one lesson for one day with a sheikh here, but most of your time spent, for example, in a coffee shop, or not in a coffee shop, but is in different restaurants, different eating places with your friends. At his house one time, playing computer half the time and eating food half the time, at the other person's the other time doing. And then you give fatwa and give rulings in Islam. That's not the correct methodology to seek knowledge. That's a mistake. A person that wants to follow the correct methodology of seeking knowledge, he has to study a book, a concise book in every science, and that becomes his foundation. That's what he builds on. So anytime he needs to refer back to an issue, he knows it's in this book, Aqidah, this is where the mas'ala is, here's the evidence from it. Nahu, these are the principles, here's how it's applied in the Quran, this is why this word has a dhamma at the end of it. Usul al-Fiqh, this is why this opinion is the strongest opinion, because the dalil that it's based upon is clear evidence from the Quran and the Sunnah, and the other opinions based upon qiyas, for example. And you can't have qiyas that opposes clear evidence in the Quran. Is able to apply the principles to understand in the book and the Sunnah. So that's a person who's a student of knowledge. Anybody else, then they're a lay person. The Quran divides people into three types: people of knowledge and people without knowledge. Ignorant people. And it's not necessarily in the blameworthy way. As long as the person understands his ignorance, he doesn't think he has knowledge and starts speaking and making mistakes based upon not having knowledge. Because ignorance is sometimes okay, it's praiseworthy, and it's blameworthy. It's praiseworthy when a person says, I don't know, because he knows he doesn't know. And it's blameworthy when a person starts giving answers based upon his own opinions and assumptions and stuff like that. He assumes something and he gives it like it's a fact. That's not allowed. That's ignorance, which is darkness upon darkness, ignorance upon ignorance. That is. But if a person comes to him and says he doesn't know, he doesn't want to make an assumption, that's okay. That's good. Okay, call that then, inshallah. Just quickly before you do, so the Quran divides people into two types: those that know and those that don't know. In the verse, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people knowledge if you don't know. People don't know, then they go to the people of knowledge and they ask them. So you have people that have knowledge and have know, and you have people that don't know. Those are the two categories of people. Yeah. For the lecture, so we've looked at so far 7 things briefly. What are they? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The phases of the types of knowledge.
Yeah.
The phase of knowledge.
Phase, or the initial phase, the first stage of seeking knowledge.
The sciences.
The different subjects that's considered knowledge.
And the other sciences that back up the.
No, that's within that. Huh? No, the hukum, you said that. You missed almost the most important, if there's something called the most important. The objective, the purpose of studying knowledge. This is key. Knowledge isn't just a theory that you learn for the sake of learning it and that's it, it's information stored. No. A person seeks knowledge so they can act upon it and so they can teach other people it and call and invite other and give dawah to it as well. That's the purpose of, to remove ignorance from yourself and to remove from other people as well. That's the purpose of seeking knowledge. Save yourselves and your family from the fire. How? By seeking knowledge, learning Islam properly, by educating them about Islam properly, and by giving them admonition when an admonition is needed, and motivation when motivation is needed, encouragement. And a Muslim's balanced in that regard. He's not always, for example, warning and threatening his family to get them to do stuff. He's also encouraging them and motivating them as well, by giving rewards and mentioning rewards. There's no harm in giving your kids rewards to memorize the Quran. If you memorize 2 lines, I'll give you £1. If you, by the end of the week you've done that, I'll give you this much. And then also as well to remove rewards if they misbehave. As a result of that, you've lost this privilege. And that way it's encouragement to do good and to stay away from bad. The purpose of knowledge is to act upon it. The purpose of knowledge is to teach other people and to call other people to it as well. What was the last heading, the last topic? The 8th one, yeah. Reasons, maybe I chose the wrong word. Reasons for success. I.e., what would make a person successful in his pursuit of knowledge? Success is from Allah, first of all. Tawfiq is from Allah. Tawfiq is from Allah. It's never from anything that, it's not from you. It's from Allah. Allah is the one that gives tawfiq and Allah is the one that gives success. So that's the first thing, is an acknowledgement of that. But from the causes and means are 5. There's 5. From amongst the main ones are these 5. The first one is ikhlas, sincerity. I tried my best to make them all begin with S. And the last one was very difficult. So I've kind of played with the last one to make it begin with S as well. But I'll tell you in Arabic and you'll see what I mean. Ikhlas is the first one. Shaghaf is the second one. Ad-du'a is the third one. The fourth one is al-mujahida or juhd. The 5th one is to stay away from the masarif or the sawarif. Let's go through them. Number 1 is ikhlas, sincerity. Number 2 is a strong desire and determination. That's 2 S's. Sincerity, strong desire. 3rd one, supplication. 4th one, striving. And the 5th one, a situation changing that turns a person away from learning ilm. First one is sincerity. 2nd one is strong desire. 3rd one, supplication. 4th one, striving. And the 5th one is situation changing that turns a person away from seeking ilm. The 5th one, the last one is the most dangerous. The last one's the most dangerous. We'll go through them quickly. The first one is sincerity. Meaning that a person is seeking knowledge to earn the pleasure of Allah and to earn reward in the afterlife. He's not doing it for money, or for popularity, or for status, or to sit on a kursi. He's not doing it for those reasons. He's doing it sincerely for the sake of Allah as an act of ibadah. That's the first one. If a person doesn't do it sincerely, he won't be successful in it, ever. Number two, a strong desire and determination. I.e., that strong desire means that he'll make time for it on a daily basis. He won't do it sometimes and leave it sometimes. His strong desire and determination to seek knowledge will mean he'll make time for it in his schedule, in his daily schedule, in his weekly schedule, in his monthly schedule, in his yearly schedule. He'll make time for seeking knowledge. It may mean that he travels to another country to seek knowledge, because he has such a strong desire. He realizes that he's limited in where he is, because there's not enough Arabic being spoken. He's not able to speak Arabic, so he goes abroad and studies Arabic in Yemen, or in Saudi, or in Egypt, or wherever he can go and study. Because the person is determined to get something, he's going to make sure he does it, and that may mean traveling. The next one is supplication, i.e., turning to Allah, asking Allah for success in learning and attaining the ilm and acting upon it. Because it's not just to learn, it's to learn and to act upon. So supplication is the third one. So these are some of the causes for success and tawfiq and seeking knowledge. Sincerity. What was the second one? Strong desire and determination. Third one? Supplication, dua. What's the fourth one? Striving. I.e., a person has to push himself. He has to try hard and he has to strive. And he has to be patient with the fatigue and the tiredness that might come as a result of doing it. The fatigue meaning that sometimes a person might think, okay, I'm doing all the studying and I'm not learning anything. So he gets bored, he might think of respect to something else. No, he has to be patient. He has to be patient in the beginning, in the middle, and he has to be patient afterwards as well. So striving means working hard, but it also means being patient. Stay in the course. Because it's tiring. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of reading. It's not something you can pick up on YouTube. You can't become a student of knowledge just on YouTube. It's not going to happen. You will not become a student of knowledge on Facebook, believe me. If all your time is spent on Facebook, don't think that you're going to acquire knowledge that way. These things are from the next category. These things are called sawarif. Things that take you away from seeking knowledge and cause you to fail in seeking knowledge. These are sawarif. This is the fifth one. Change the situation that turn the person away from learning knowledge. And these things are not restricted to times, or they're not restricted to, for example, a number. There's not a limited number of things that turn a person away from knowledge, but if you know these things, there's not other things. Either happen all the time, it can be at any time, and it can happen, it can be of different types. From them, and the two most common ones, pay attention. Number one is chasing money. Chasing money or seeking money more than you need is a thing that takes a person away from seeking knowledge. I.e., I'll start after I've got a job. Or you start and I'll continue my studies after my university education. It will never happen. After university education, there'll be something else. After that, there'll be something else. You'll never seek knowledge if that's what you do. Say, after I get a job, after I get married, you'll never seek knowledge. So these are things that take a person and turn a person away from seeking knowledge. The second thing, which is common, and I've called it says sitting with people that don't benefit you in knowledge and that spend a lot of time idly. You can call it social media. Social media takes a person away from seeking knowledge because it's social, you're with people, but those people, what are they benefiting you in knowledge? Or is majority of it idle talk? Checking updates, checking replies to updates, replying to an update that you checked, the reply to the update. How are you going to seek knowledge? Or when are you going to seek knowledge? These things, they turn a person away from seeking knowledge to something which when you weigh it up, they're not equal in value. What you've given up is valuable. What you've turned towards doesn't have much value, if it has any at all. So these two things, money, chasing money more than is needed, always looking for extra money, and social gatherings which are not knowledge-based, i.e. people speaking about dunya in their or idle speech, backbiting, gossiping, these things which show that the person is not serious about seeking knowledge. I.e. these things, the sawarif, these things that take a person away from seeking knowledge, they show if a person is sincere and serious, or they're not serious about seeking knowledge. And in all honesty, many people that say that they're serious about seeking knowledge, they want more durus, they want that, they're not serious about seeking knowledge because they get affected by the fifth one the most. Sawarif. They start and they say, okay, I'll come back to it after. I'll do this first, I'll do that first, and they never come back to it. So these are the things that a person has to be aware of. These five, they're important. So the 5 S's: sincerity, a strong desire, determination, supplication, striving, and yeah, that's not really a good one anyway. The fifth one, it needs to go back. We can't make it an S. We'll just say that a person having things that come up that always turn them away from seeking knowledge.
فإن آمنوا بمثل ما آمنتم به فقد اهتدوا وإن تولوا فإنما هم في شقاق